Hey guys, welcome. Happy Monday. How's everyone doing? Ready for Monday? Excited for Monday? Not so much? You guys
Pretty
working
good so far.
pretty good so far? Awesome. Nice. How's the hackathon? Is everyone coming in from the Stepson hackathon? Anyone? Yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
Nice, nice. I'd love to kind of hear your journey in chat and just like, hey, I'm currently working on Hack Week, or if this is your first workshop with Mintbean, love to kind of hear from where you guys are joining us today. And if you've ever heard about Mintbean learnathons, hackathons, and if you're inside, is the audio off or is it just me?
I hear you.
Okay.
And someone replied to you.
Okay. Someone replied to me for the audio. Okay, let me know if you guys are unable to hear me. Do I sound clear? Audio is good. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you again for joining. Super excited about, as you guys know, it has been a phenomenal Hack Week with Stepson. Today's workshop is sponsored by Stepson. And if you're not familiar with this amazing company and the work that they've been doing, it sort of lets you connect your data source within minutes and deploy and run your API. It's an awesome experience. I'm gonna drop their portal in chat for you all to look at. And again, this is the only plug that I'll be doing. I know I always do a singular plug, but you guys have to forgive me for that. It goes part and parcel of being a host. But more, let's go into today's workshop. I'm super excited for Lorna to join us. She is a lifelong advocate for open source professional development, and I am super excited for her to share her journey and to hear more about her personal journey as well. So Lorna, welcome to Mintbean. Before we jump into today's workshop, I'd love to tell the audience a little bit about you. Just introduce yourself and just how you got into software, what exactly is the work that you're doing at Aiven. I know you're a developer advocate, but what does that entail? Tell us a little bit more.
Sure, let me see if I can round up some of those answers. So I'm a developer advocate at Aiven, and we do cloud database things, but we have a bunch of them, which means that I am helping lots of different developers do amazing data things with lots of different technologies. And so as an advocate, I do write code. My background is in software engineering, but it's mostly just a little bit of glue code showing you how you would do a particular thing with Node.js or Python or whatever, and whichever database. So I write a lot of documentation, I write a lot of blog posts, I speak at conferences and meetups. I do quite a lot of the internal strategy as well. So you maybe see less of me on the internet right now as I'm doing a bit more of a kind of managerial role. And yeah, developer advocacy and all of the developer relations or DevRel jobs are about connecting developers with the businesses, with the products. So Aiven make this cloud database platform, and my job is to kind of explain Aiven things to developers, but also crucially to bring the feedback from developers and kind of explain it back to Aiven. So I am the voice of the developers, and it's a very sort of self-service product. So yeah, I write a lot of documentation, and in a way, not hearing from people maybe means it's going okay.
How did you get into that? Like, what was how did you get interested in developer advocacy? Because a lot of the developers in our community are fairly new to development. So what kind of interested you to go into developer relations and advocacy? And I know this word is still fairly new in the industry.
It is, and it certainly wasn't around at the start. So I've been a software developer for a bunch of years, and I guess I've always wanted to share what I know with others, and I've always been more in the open source space. My background is web development, so I've done a lot of PHP, a lot of those open source, amazing technologies and communities as well. You know, the PHP community is one of the older ones around, and it's got a really strong community. So I've always written my blog. So my blog is 15 years old now. And I refer to it often myself. It's a really good place to put things that there isn't room for in my brain. And if it also reaches other people and they find that content useful, then it's like double win. If I wrote it and nobody but me ever read it, I learn by making the blog posts and then also writing about it. I guess I started speaking at conferences kind of as a way to find my people. I just wanted to learn more all the time, but I was, as a relatively new developer, people didn't want to pay for me to go to conferences. There were not actually that many in the UK at the time anyway. But if you give a talk, they'll pay for your ticket and they'll also pay your travel expenses. So as long as you can get time off from work, and I didn't spend my annual leave, holiday, vacation time on much else for a few years there, you can go and then you get to attend all of the talks and learn all the other things. You have to give a talk, which I always saw as a bit of a downside, although I love it now. But you get to attend the others.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. It's just that we had somebody from Netflix do a talk last week, and somebody asked him a question about what are some of the other great communities and conferences. And I think he mentioned React Rally, which I had never heard of before. But then, because I'm so familiar with the conference world, I know how expensive a lot of these tickets could get. So this is a great hack, going in as a speaker, or even like volunteering, guys. Like they're usually looking for volunteers for these big conferences like Next.js, and you kind of get to meet. I don't know how the volunteer position works online, but I remember volunteering my time for live events, and you get to meet a lot of people. It just exposes you to this massive network of just people from the backstage. Like you're not just talking to people who are going there, but you're usually you kind of see this when the speaker is done talking, there's like this gravity of people that move towards the speaker, so you kind of get the benefit of like having them on the other side where you get a one-on-one relationship. Sorry, Lauren, I didn't mean to take away from your thunder, but I just wanted to say great hack.
No, and that was a great addition. There are lots of ways to get involved in the events, whether it's like a local meetup, an online event like this one, or what we call them the real thing, although they're just the same, and the big tech conferences. And that's been a huge benefit. And that's kind of how I started. And if you watch those, I mean, I don't think we have video of the oldest talks I ever gave, but let's just say I've come a long way. Practice really does make perfect.
Nice. You should see some of my first talks. I'm like, there was someone in our community that was complimenting me on my hosting abilities. And I was like, my eyes were rolling. And I was like, I'm so bad. I'm so like, when I think of myself as a host, I don't put myself in the same caliber as, any of the other hosts that I enjoy listening to. Because I feel like, when you listen back, like your voice sounds waspy, or you're like, why do I sound so breathy? Like, you look at yourself and there's like 10 things that you don't like immediately off the gate. And that's how I feel when I present. So I'm so incredibly critical, but I think the important thing is you show up and you keep showing up no matter what. And this is what we talk about in our community as well. It's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to, not be the best, but continuing to work on yourself, I think, is one of those pillars that we really talk about. But enough about me and my hosting abilities. I'm going to let you talk about open source building your professional development in the open source world.
Okay, let me see if I can show off my technical skills and share my screen. This is always the moment where it's like, is it gonna work? It's like plugging in the laptop on the big stage, but different. Okay, maybe. Okay, cool. So hi, I'm Lorna. We've just talked about me and we've talked a bit about Aiven as well. So I've put together just a few slides to kind of guide me through the things that I want to share with you, the stuff that I wish I'd known earlier, really, in my career. And I think this just leads on super nicely from what we were just talking about there, about working on yourself or like participating and showing up. I always say that open source is a state of mind. It is about being just showing up, doing what you do, participating, and then sharing what happened. And it can be a tiny fix or something that you don't think is particularly groundbreaking, but the world is full of things that were not especially groundbreaking. So that's you're doing it right. If it feels like that, you know, open source is many small things together. We talk about open source as being free software, and that's definitely my route in. You know, as a student, I didn't have the money, but here was some stuff that with a bit of oh, the chat box in front of the slides. Thanks. I'll put it over here. Is that better? They're not very exciting slides, but yeah, cool. Hold on while I try and scroll the chat to where I can see it now. I think it would be worth it, because then if I'm doing it wrong, you'll be able to tell me.
No, I think you're good. It's out of view.
Okay, but I can't keep up with the chat. It's like weirdly scrolling in the window. Okay, well, I might have to just abandon you all in chat. You'll have to talk amongst yourselves and I will come back to you. Okay. Open source is not about free software, but it kind of is. And that's the gateway drug. That's certainly how I got into it. So, but it's also about the culture. It's about being free to use this thing for whatever you want to use it for. And if you make it better, tell us, like share it in whatever way. And I think my blog was the first way that I began to share. I definitely wrote about open source tooling. In fact, I was a conference speaker before I was an open source contributor, because it was not quite so approachable then as I think it is now. So it's about freedom, it's about sharing, it's about solving problems. If you have to look up one thing from one place and one thing from another place and put them together, then, you know, write that down or build the integration or somehow make that easier. If you take a script and adapt it, then, you know, put that somewhere as well, because any one of us might need it. And I think it's just super important for us to be able to do that and to share those ideas with everyone. Look, the best thing about open source, and the reason I think it's a state of mind, is when you wonder, how did they do that? It's open source. You can look and put together other people's experiences and examples and build on them and adapt them for the things that you're doing. You can look behind the curtain and see how they did it. It's an amazing way to learn. I am old enough that as a teenager, I learned HTML by viewing the source. I mean, we don't build websites right like that now, really. But at the time, you know, that was it. You just look how it happens and then, you know, that's the same, that you can look at how those projects work. You can get copies of them and try them. It's an amazing way to learn. I always say that in open source, nobody is truly self-taught. I'm kind of self-taught, like I have a degree in something else, and I did have a textbook once. That's really old-fashioned. And I built my own projects and I tried things out, and I learned a lot that way. But it pales in comparison to what I've learned when I've learned from others and collaborated with others and participated, been on there, seen their code and the way that they work and the way that they interact with each other, the way that they tackle a problem when someone reports a bug. So that crowd around you become your teachers, and they're your peers, but they're also people who have had different experiences to you, exactly as you've had different experiences from them. and you can show things together. When you actively participate in open source, find something to hack on, give it a try, see if you can fix a bug, see if you can at least just report the issue that you had, you're teaching yourself. You're raising your own game, and you're bringing yourself into contact with others. And you might get some feedback about that was a terrible way to report a bug. Hopefully some people will be more polite. I guarantee not everyone will be more polite. I'm sorry. But everything that I learned in the open. Everything I learned out there, doing things, fixing stuff, asking questions. And I think when we say we're self-taught, this is the way that we teach ourselves. We find the resources that we need to find our way. The most important thing I want to say about open source, it almost, especially with professional development, is the contributions take many forms. You're going to write code, yeah, I hope that you will, but that's not the only way. There are lots of ways to be a really important person or a really important part of the story of an open source project. Just last week, I opened a pull request that added one of our work open source tools to one of those awesome lists. It's one line of markdown, and I opened a pull request. All of us can do that, but and it might seem small, it might seem really inconsequential, but actually the small things, because we're all doing small things, really add up together. And now the next person that goes to look on the list of awesome Kafka tools will find this option that maybe they didn't know about before, and maybe it's not the right thing, but at least the information is there for them. It doesn't have to be rocket science. I think the documentation on the projects is a brilliant way to make friends. A lot of the time you'll come into contact with senior developers or developers of all levels who think the documentation is like, it's for other people, it's not important, it's boring, it's tedious. It isn't. It's vitally important. I always say about APIs, if you're not going to write the API documentation, don't bother making the API, because it is worthless without being able to interface with the human. I don't know any 10 times developers who are not also great writers. Being able to write well and communicate well is absolutely a developer's superpower. It's underrated. I don't know why it's a secret. It's a secret, but it's my secret, right? Learning to write well and being prepared to do it so that when you make a cool tool, you enable other people to use it. When you come into a problem with install instructions, you fix it. Now everyone can install that tool. Like the tool might already have been great. You didn't build the tool, but you enabled so many people to make use of it themselves by sharing what you knew. I think if you were to look really hard at my GitHub history, you know, my graph is green most years, sort of depends what's going on at work. If you were to look really closely, you would see a lot of those contributions are markdown files. Probably, I don't know, a good percentage will be readme.md, where I've had to go and fix an install. You know, I had to ask a question to get something working, or Google it or look it up, or it was confusing. And I fixed the install instructions. That's incredibly valuable. And it's a really good way to get to know a community, but it's also a really, really key part of your professional development, is those skills when you come to creating tasks for other people, communicating about features, collaborating with people maybe in different places. This, not just your code as well. Being able to write, being prepared to write, is going to see you through. When we talk about contributions as well, it can be all sorts of projects, and there's sometimes the projects that are adjacent to the big ones. You know, maybe you're going to be a Node.js contributor one day, but before that, you're probably going to be a contributor to one of the various libraries or dependencies that you actually use in your own tech stack. So look out not just for the headline things, but also for those smaller ones around. When you're looking at projects, it's really important that you find a place that you feel comfortable. And that's a really difficult thing to measure. I wish I could tell you, oh, if it's got this, it's going to be a really good project. Humans are much messier than that. I mean, have a look at the project. Has it got any activity? If it hasn't, then they might appreciate your input, but you might also never get anything reviewed. Have a look if the issues have been open a long time. Check the closed ones. See if anything's been closed recently, and the pull requests. See if anything's been merged recently. Look out for issues that look like they were expecting new people. There's a tag good first issue that you might have already heard about that projects can use to indicate you don't need in-depth knowledge of this project to help with this issue. And it might be something simple, but in order to be able to fix that, probably you need to get the tool, install it, get it set up, learn how to use that tool from the tip of a local Git branch. You'll learn loads fixing the simplest things. And especially when you start doing that across lots of different projects, suddenly you can skill up on everything really, really quickly. Check the setup instructions. That's a good indicator of whether they were expecting any other humans to contribute to this project. This is a really difficult thing to find your open source happy place, and it's very unlikely that you'll pick correctly first time, and that's okay. Open source is a journey, and you should be moving on from time to time. So look, if you get silence, if you get weirdness, if it's just not that great, journey on. You should always be moving forward. I have been maintainer of a project that I'm no longer a maintainer of. My interests moved on. I scaled up in some other technologies, and I wanted to be working on those in my passion project time, not still doing the same old thing for the same old project. And I had some great successes take over from me. It's not a dog. It's not for life. It's just for as long as it's interesting, and you're learning something, and it's totally fine. If you don't feel settled, then just keep on moving. Look for the next thing to do. One big thing that comes up in open source is this misconception about open source being something that noble and intelligent people give for the good of the world. And we talk about it with these very big words, and it's more like a bag of kittens, really. There is no, one very well qualified person doing immense and thoughtful good. Like, somebody got an error with the installation and they fixed it for their platform. It's 2 lines. And we did that an infinitely large number of times, right? It's not something that you eventually get good enough to be allowed to do. Open source is something that if we don't do it all the time, it'll go away. I'm not quite sure where your career would be if that happened. Mine would be done. I think when you participate in open source, right, you are choosing a team to be part of for a day, right? You're just picking something cool. You get to choose the work. No one can make you do anything you don't want to. You get to choose what you're interested in. You get to find something that you want to fix or make better or improve. You've got an idea for a feature, or just the spelling mistake on the README is bothering you. All of that is valuable and important. And the way that you do that, you open the pull request, perhaps you'll learn something about the tests that that project expects you to write. Or maybe you learn something about communicating with other people about a problem, or it doesn't work for them, but it does work for you. Or I always learn something. So that being part of a team is what sets the learning aspect apart from how I feel when I make something and put it publicly on GitHub and it's like, yes, I have done open source, here is my code, it is available, versus dealing with someone else's unfamiliar code that lots of people use, and there will always be more users than contributors. So you're making an impact for lots and lots of people, and that just really appeals to me about making things better like enabling other people, improving the tools, improving the instructions. Maybe that's why I'm an advocate now, but it's something that has always appealed to me. And even as a coder, you know, as an engineer, I really wanted to work on things that were making a difference. And I feel like open source does that. One of the tools that I work on, it's called RST to PDF. It transforms restricted text to PDF files. Like, we know that it's being used by government agencies in difficult situations, and that, you know, it's just a PDF tool, but it's all part of what's in the world. And of course, everything that you do is public. It's part of your public portfolio. And I think I, as an interviewer, definitely go straight to your GitHub profile. And there is a difference between you have followed a tutorial and put the code publicly on your GitHub, and, oh, you're a contributor to, okay, a tiny library I've never heard of, but it says to me you can get beyond your own projects. So I don't know why we talk about this idea of like this amazing person who does these incredible donated code to the world. There are a few of these around, but they're not the majority. And I think it's unfair because it kind of gives the impression that it's not for everybody. Let me tell you this. Open source is the best hustle I've ever done for myself, for my team. Expensive training courses, no. Books, workshops, online learning. I mean, sure. Open source. Just rainy Sunday afternoon, try something out, learn something new, get my pull request rejected, try again, and get better. The best thing I've ever done. And I've learned so much. I met so many people fixing all kinds of stuff. And now, you know, I program in multiple languages. Don't let me near the front end. It was not safe. I program multiple server-side languages. I know people in all sorts of different countries, and yeah, it's led to a very successful career for me. But I've done a bunch of different things, and I feel like I have a lot of options. So I think this is a myth. I need a picture of like lots and lots of teeny dragons all climbing over each other, because it's way closer to the truth. So if this is new to you, where should you start? I did a really scientific survey, meaning I tweeted for help. And here is a list of projects. I will tweet this afterwards as well. Here is a list of projects that were recommended to me. Now, my specific request was for safe places for new open source contributors to get involved. So places that are good at welcoming new people, that have sensible setup stuff, have a reasonable code of conduct, and would be pleased to see you. Top of the list has to be Drupal. If you haven't seen it already, it's a PHP kind of content management system. It's incredible. It's a huge community. I haven't met many nicer or more diverse technical communities. Thoroughly recommended from me. Next, KDE. Now that's a foundation. They have lots of different projects, but they do have really solid contributor enablement. Is that a word? So definitely check them out. Totally biased. I put RST to PDF on this list. It's a Python project, and it also has a website with documentation and examples. Both of them have good first issues tagged on them, and you would have me as your maintainer giving you feedback on the stuff that you do. So if that doesn't sound too frightening, then you should absolutely check that out. We would love new contributors. JHipster was recommended to me. Open Data Cam if you're a little bit more on the hardware side, and also Civi CRM, which I'm not familiar with, but I hear good things about it. I will tweet a photograph of this, so you can grab it later. So I'm going to put the resources slide up and share some links with you that we will also make available. My slides are somewhere. I'll share that link. You should start typing your questions now. I'm going to talk about these resources, then I'm going to stop my screen share so that I can come back to chat and talk to you. Okay. So first, I want to share this webinar that I did with DigitalOcean in October during Hacktoberfest. And it's about getting your pull request accepted. I think a lot of open source contributions are via pull request. They're on GitHub. That's the way we do things. But I have some advice on making your pull request fabulous. And getting it accepted. I think if you're new to the space, there's some unwritten rules, and I've tried to get those in there. So that was recorded in October when I was still at Vonage. Don't be put off by that. Next, goodfirstissue.dev, a great place to find things to work on. It compiles all of the good first issues, all of the issues on GitHub tagged with that good first issue label, and puts them all in one place. So you can look for things that you're interested in, or particularly tech stacks that you know or that you want to learn. So you're looking for issues to get started with. Upforgrabs.net seems to be very similar to that. That was also recommended to me as a place you should go to find places to start. I have Aiven.io. That's my employer. If you need a database, it has a great free trial. Check it out. And then there's my blog. So I'm lornajane.net, and all the other social, Twitter, Twitch, GitHub things, whatever, are all linked from there. Books, stuff that I've done are all in one place. So some resources for you. Let me stop my screen share. Don't need it now. There we go. And come back to the group. Hello. I still can't scroll. I just can't. Scroll bars are not a thing.
There's a couple of questions in chat.
Okay.
So if you can't find them, I don't mind reading them out to you. So Josh asks, you mentioned writing skills being critical. How do you recommend being a good writer if you're not one already?
Okay, so how to be a good writer. Just need to show up and write. I'm sorry. Somebody told me years and years ago now that I should take the first year's worth of blog posts off the internet because I was embarrassing myself. And honestly, no. That's how we learn. We learn by doing. And I think it's really important to write stuff and to keep on writing stuff. I mean, now I'm a published author. I get editors for that though. Like that's when you do the dead tree thing, somebody else checks those things. I'm running a docs project, and it's just from doing it. I think contributing to documentation efforts, so things like if you are multilingual, if you're polyglot, translation efforts, that can be a good way to work with other documentarians. There are also things like the Good Docs Project, which I would recommend as a good way to learn some of those writing skills as well, and they'll have recommendations of things to get involved in. But yeah, I got better at writing by writing, and I definitely would recommend that approach.
Learn by doing is something that we definitely talk about all the time. So
it's true.
Totally understand where you're coming from. Mohammed asks, do you have any recommendations, books to read, platforms to visit, YouTube channels to watch?
Let's think about that. There are some good ones around, but I'm gonna recommend that you instead go and find an open source project and spend time with it. I think we can spend too much time preparing ourselves and studying, and in fact we'll never know that we were ready, and we could have been hands-on. So by all means, read more about the things that I've said that seem interesting, but just look for kind of what makes sense to you, or maybe in your tech stack. You can follow me on Twitter. There's resources coming out all the time. I feel like I'm fairly unstoppable.
Ian asks if you can put that resource list back up. Do you mind sharing that slide again?
This last resources slide that I just had? Yeah.
I believe so.
That is.
But I also want to mention to everybody listening today that if you were here for the Stepson kickoff, Anthony Cambello started contributing to Redwood very early on after he finished his boot camp, and that's how he connected with his current employer. So he's a great resource as well, to just ask questions in terms of like how to get started. I think that when you're coming in from like when you're not as experienced and you're having to contribute to open source, like it can be very intimidating because there's that those tickets are scrolling fairly quickly. You don't know like who the maintainers are, and you don't know where to start. I personally really like communities that are very active. Like one of my personal recommendations is the Redwood community. They're really friendly. They do like weekly meetings with their contributors. You can get to know their team. It's an awesome community. So I'd want to add that to the resource section.
That's fantastic. Can we get that in chat as well?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I temporarily have the chat window open. It just doesn't scroll for me. I'm not the joys of Fedora, and I very rarely use Zoom. Cool. So let me try and pick up a few of these questions. Can you bring the resources list up? I've done that. When you're looking at a project, there's so much going on. Where do you start? Yeah, that's a really tricky one. If you're new to the project, then check out that Good First issue if they have it. Otherwise, the issue that you understand is a great place to start. I think this for a first contribution, the smaller ones are ideal because that's when you are going to find out what the internal norms for the project are, and they are all different. Some will need you to do particular things with your Git branches or whatever. So it's good to keep that in like quite a small issue. Also, my top tip, and you can watch the Hacktoberfest webinar, but my top tip is to check out the contributing file before you start working, because GitHub will prompt you as you open the pull request, but usually the important information that you needed to do the work to make the branch to open the pull request is there. So check the contributing file first. Beyond that, where do you start? Something you want to do for yourself, something you would like to learn, something you would like to fix on a tool. Literally follow your nose, follow your instincts, and failing that, just pick something. And don't be afraid if you start something and if you don't actually fix the bug, or you don't actually open the pull request, that's fine. You probably learned something. Like, you probably set up the project. Like, I have a few where I dig in and I'm like, never mind. I don't have enough time to fix this thing, which is way more complicated than I expected. And that's all right. Okay, question from Dorian. What does the process of getting into your first open source project? Literally go on the internet and choose. You don't need permission. I mean, I give you all permission. Yes, your actions are blessed. Go forth and open source. There isn't a process. Pick something, open a pull request. If you don't know how to do that, there are some amazing resources around, and the GitHub website is a really good place to start. It's a key skill, and you'll need it in any sort of software development. So definitely worth learning. And I think if you are new to GitHub, actually opening those smaller pull requests, the harder part isn't the change that you're making, but it's really good practice for opening pull requests and communicating with people. So very, very much recommended. In these open source communities, are there people posting issues that need resolved? Then you try and work on it. Yeah, exactly. Or do you clone it, find things you want to change and submit it? Either. So you can just offer a fix of something that you think makes a project better. Unless it's very tiny, I would always recommend opening an issue first, because if it's something that project doesn't support for a reason, maybe it's always used with another tool that already does it anyway, or I can't think of another reason. There might be a reason why that feature isn't there, but I would recommend looking for open issues and see if there's anything you can get into and try and fix. Are there opportunities to learn and collaborate later? Of course, I'm on the internet. I'm out there. You'll probably find me. Some very fast and excellent resource copy pasting from David. Thank you. Given what I know about these two projects, aren't they particularly large in scope? KDE and Drupal? Yes, they're both enormous. And they both have hundreds, if not more than hundreds, of smaller modules, extensions, and tools, and projects, and documentation sites, and translation projects, and everything. But they also have excellent cultures. So they're very big projects. They're more like umbrella projects, They contain a bunch of smaller projects. Drupal, so I don't know KDE as well. Drupal runs what it calls like sprints, new contributor sprints, and they will literally sit you down, ask you what you're interested in, and find you something to do. And there are people to help you set up, help you find something to do, and help you make that first change. So they are huge projects. Yes, very good question.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's an amazing onboarding for new contributors.
Yeah, no, Drupal's incredible.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, although I don't know PHP, yeah, there's probably not just PHP things to do. And I hope that there are also other projects that are similar. It was completely predictable that I would get PHP responses because that's my home community, although I don't write much PHP now. And they keep releasing new versions. I'm finding it difficult to keep up. Don't tell anyone. Okay, who else has questions? I mean, on what I've just said or career stuff?
Guys, feel free to unmute yourself and ask Lorna a question directly if you feel comfortable.
I have a question. So say you find the open source thing you want to work on and maybe you make it the tiniest change in the world. I don't know what that tiniest change would be. Is there I guess my question goes, how or do you talk about this like in a resume type of format? Do you just say took part in open source, look at me? Like what's the best language for those type of projects?
So most of what you contribute to in open source will be on GitHub. So I would register your account on GitHub, which you'll need to make that change, even if it's tiny, and just share your GitHub profile in the same way that you probably have a link to maybe your website or your LinkedIn page on your resume. Then go ahead and include GitHub as well, because for developer jobs, even if there's not a lot there, I think that's expected, and it will show all of your public open source contributions so people can see what you've been hacking on. And that's another reason to do it, right? Because it shows that you're a self-starter.
That was a really good question because a lot of it's especially if you haven't worked on in production code, working on an open source initiative is such a fantastic way of getting experience. And usually open source core contributors are working full time at other companies. So it's also a really great way to network and sort of increase your professional network. And and if they like what they see, they might make recommendations.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also, if you're coming into this industry, that ability to communicate and make changes using this GitHub thing is, I don't think it's too strong to say it's required. So by making the small changes that Joe suggested and just getting familiar with that workflow, when you do start working, or if you did want to take like a freelance contract to collaborate with others or whatever, then you don't need to focus on that part because you've got that part nailed. Okay. And then you can focus on what's specific about the job that you're learning to do.
Absolutely. Awesome, guys. This was a really insightful session. I actually did not know. I learned a couple of things. I didn't know this list that you shared for some of I didn't know that Drupal had a fantastic onboarding experience. I thought it was just another open source initiative. I didn't realize how organized their team was. I'm definitely going to be recommending that a little bit more often. I'd love to actually even meet their team and bring them into Mintbean. So I'll be working on that. If you know anyone, Lauren, I'd love to bring them in as a side note. But yeah, this is a fantastic list. I'm going to get started on seeing if we can bring some of these individuals in.
Yeah, definitely. I think with Drupal, let's find your local user group or, local to perhaps one of the crowd, and get them involved to tell you a bit about it. But they run regular sessions, and of course everything's online now, so hopefully that opens the door. Drupal, I'll type spelled like that. Yeah. Awesome. Does anyone else want to talk about anything, have any questions? My contact details are on my website if you think of anything later.
I think
I
that's
have one, sorry.
no worries.
I have a question. Earlier in your presentation, you talked a bit about being a backend developer generally. Can you tell me a little bit more, if you can, about how you use those skills in the day-to-day, if you do, and are you expected as somebody in DevRel to know multiple backend languages, or is that just something that's come through your career journey?
That's a really great question. And asking questions about an average day in developer relations is super difficult because every job is different. We're a very diverse set of skill sets. Some members of the DevRel teams don't necessarily code at all. So I actually do use them all. I'm currently working on a demo that has Python and Go and some Kafka and something called async API in it. And I'm creating a demo. We have a very technical audience. So, that's what I do. I create stuff for people. In the previous role, I created SDKs in Node, PHP, Go, Python, right? So there's a bunch of different things. So I use it mostly to make enough of a demo app that I can write a tutorial or give a conference demo, and someone who is vaguely familiar with the technology but hasn't used specifically this before could understand what's happening and maybe look up the details later or follow through the steps in a tutorial. So perhaps they're already familiar with Python and they're going to go ahead and try sending some events, like event streaming data with Kafka and Python. So that's the kind of level that I'm at, but I think that's as you kind of suggested at the end of your question there, it's a feature of that's my specialism. I spent many years doing PHP with database backends and APIs to link out to other front ends or mobile apps or whatever, other systems. And then the joy of developer advocacy is they don't really care. Like it's not like I wouldn't get hired as a Node.js developer, but I can do enough to show someone who already knows Node.js how to do this particular thing, right? So, I could teach a beginner, probably wouldn't get hired as a super advanced Node.js developer, but I know enough to be dangerous. So it's given me an amazing opportunity to broaden my skills. So although I had quite a lot of software engineering beforehand, then I use them all, but I use them to test things, quickly try out another tool, quickly test something out, see if it works with our backend, different backends, and also build my own demos. So it is a bit of a mix. In general, developer relations, it helps if you can build enough to show a demo or in a conference talk or walk someone else through a tutorial, just spin up this Docker setup and then, it's running on this and you can change stuff. It helps, but there are lots of roles that don't need that. So it's difficult to generalize.
Lorna, would it be fair to say that in order to be good in developer relations and advocacy, you have to be really good at teaching someone else how to use something?
Yeah, I think that works really well. I mean, I think the key skill for DevRel is empathy. Is understanding who your people are, where they are, what language they speak. So should you be on Reddit or are they more on the Facebook groups? Are they Twitter people? Would GitHub be familiar to them, or should you provide code that could be just downloaded? So kind of understanding that context. But yeah, I certainly, I was a sports coach as a volunteer earlier in my life, and I feel like I bring some of that sometimes, trying to show people around things.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. Guys, thank you so much for all your questions. Lorna, I know we only had you scheduled for like 30 minutes and had you stay for an hour. Thank you for spending so much time with us today. Really appreciate it. Guys, really, really appreciate another session, and thank you so much for joining. Just lastly, we put a lot of effort into our learnathons. I know that Lorna mentioned that the best way to learn is by doing. That is exactly why we do these learnathons. They're completely free. They're a fantastic resource. Please, please, please take advantage of them. Our team spends a lot of effort building those learnathons. Next week, I believe this Friday, we're doing a chat app. So that one's going to be pretty cool. I look forward to seeing you guys on Fridays, like always. Take care. Bye.